Hello, YouTube. It's DasGregor for another Linux distribution first impressions. This week we'll be looking at ZorinOS 7. A lot of people have asked me lately whether they would say that Zorin is better than Linux Mint for a new user. Seeing how I've never looked at Zorin before, I decided to bump it up a little bit in the list to go ahead and do the review so I can answer that question. And my answer is depends. It depends on what type of experience your Windows user is looking for within Linux. Now, one thing I really don't like, and that's a personal feeling, not a judgmental feeling, is I don't like it when a Linux distribution makes themselves look so much like Windows that you almost can't tell the difference. Now, on one hand, it's really good for, say, a user who's timid and afraid to look at a new OS, and so the familiarity of the GUI and everything else makes them feel like, hey, I'm just in Windows, it just looks a little different. So they kind of ease into it a little bit easier. But for someone who really wants to look at Linux in all its ability, I'm still going to say go to Linux Mint if they're new, if they really want a true experience of Linux. I mean, this is good. We'll go over a few things here in a second. If you've never experienced Linux before and you're scared to death to do it, and you want it to look a lot like Windows, then this is good for you. Like it says here, it's a multifunctional operating system designed specifically for Windows users who want to have ease and smooth access to Linux. That's what this is. If we look at it, it's got pretty much the same thing that everything does. Your taskbar down there, your home button, your trash can. It did come with Google Chrome, which I kind of was surprised because, honestly, like a few of you guys have asked me about Google Chrome, I've had a lot of crashes with Google Chrome within Linux, and I don't think that that's a good experience to have for anybody, an OS or a piece of software that gives you crashes. Now, I've had very good, strong experience with Chromium, Firefox, a lot of the other browsers. I was kind of surprised to see that Chrome was there. I left it anyway because this is a first impressions of this type of system. If we look at the menu system here, you're going to see that you have the same search bar that you might see in Windows 7 or Vista. You have the same type of menu items here, accessories, games, graphics, etc. Instead of clicking on it and have it open up, it opens right into here. You still have LibreOffice. Your accessories, very minimal, terminal, calculator, text editor. They really lay it out very basically for a new user. In graphics, you've got the GIMP, of course. They do have and have included the stock items that you would want to see immediately within Linux. Inside of the internet here, you do have a messenger service, Google Chrome, of course, like I said, Thunderbird for your email. Office we were in has LibreOffice. Sound and video, I've added a few things because I installed GUVC View. Simple screen recorder, but it did come with OpenShot editor, Cheese, a disk CD burning software. If you see the items over here, they're things you're going to be familiar with: a home folder, the documents, your pictures, music, etc., etc. And your system configurations are pretty much laid out the same way that you would expect to see them within most other flavors or distributions. But it just has so much of a Windows It's hard to say when you say a Windows flair. It's more of a Microsoft flair to it. More of a Redmond style everywhere. And you do have a little bit of differences here that really point out that it's a Linux distribution, but for the most part, a Linux user who is afraid of Linux is going to be very comfortable and feel comfortable within this environment, and that's what's most important here. Now, it is based on Ubuntu, which I always put it as that's a negative, because it used to be a strong positive. I'm just not a Ubuntu fan, plain and simple. Ever since I saw what they did with Unity and GNOME 3, I sound like a broken record. I'm not happy with that direction at all. What else does Zorin have to offer? It's pretty much the same thing you're going to see everywhere else. But the biggest difference is it's all wrapped in a Microsoft-esque environment that's going to make you feel a lot more comfortable. Now, whether or not it's better than Linux Mint or not, if you compare apples to apples, Linux Mint Ubuntu version versus ZorinOS Ubuntu version, I'm going to say that, like I said at the beginning, if you are looking for a Windows Microsoft look and feel, ZorinOS is going to make you feel a little bit more comfortable. Has a little bit less, I think, in the application area, but the interface is going to make you feel like you're at home. Not to say Linux Mint, of course, doesn't make you feel at home. It just has more of a Linux feel. And personally, if you're looking at going into Linux, I would want more of a Linux feel to my desktop and to learn more about how that is. But, I'm coming from a tech type background. I've worked on computers off and on since the very first computer my father ever bought, which was an Osborne 1 back in '82. And back then I was learning to program in BASIC and assembly language, and I was still wet behind the ears. So I've had computers up and around me for years and years, decades. I've been in a computer related field for my work for more than 20 years now. So for me, I'm not afraid to jump in and get my feet wet. But for the user who might be a little bit afraid but still might to see what this Linux thing is and what in the world can it do for me, then Zorin might be the way to go if you don't want to have any surprises right out of the bat or right out of the box. Of course, like many other applications, the software installation is simple. You still use Synaptics to get to it. And of course, you put in your password. And voila, you've got all your good stuff here to look for. Now, that might be a little overwhelming for a new person, but for just what's there, they've got everything that they need to do. If you think about it, if you installed vanilla Windows anything, what do you get? You get a browser, a text editor, a DOS box window. Other than that, that's about it. You're already tenfold better with Linux. You've got yourself at least, the GIMP, a CD burning software, the Office suite. The Office suite alone, if you wanted something like that within Microsoft, you'd be paying a couple $100 just to be able to get that functionality. That's the cool thing about if you're trying to point someone who's a Windows user that's looking at getting moved over, just point out the fact that Linux has so much more to offer right out of the box. Before you even have to start installing software, there is so much already there to look at and use. Zorin has been smooth. I haven't had any bugs. The installation was very easy. Simple questions. I was able to use their live disk on my USB stick with no problem. So the installation was not scary. It was very straightforward. The partitioning of the hard drives were simple and straightforward, easy to understand. I think that's one of the most difficult things for a lot of people, and that is that they're afraid when doing the software installation, partitioning the hard drive, setting up bootloader, especially if they want a dual boot and they want to keep their old flavor of Windows along with the new Linux and dual boot. A lot of people aren't ready just to jump in, and to be honest, like I said in one of my last Gen 2 reviews, where I have to admit that I still have a Windows partition. It is a necessary evil that you can never escape at this point in time. There is always going to be some sort of software that you cannot use within Linux. An example of that is, for instance, my favorite is, not that I'm plugging and telling you to go out and buy anything, but this is my favorite controller, and if you look really closely there, I've even customized it with the Linux Penguin there in the background. But this is my Logitech Harmony remote. This thing controls everything from my PS3, Wii, sound system, DVD, you name it, TV, about 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe a dozen devices if I think about it. If I go into the devices, I've got my Xbox, my TV, my Onkyo, my VCR, my DVD player, my HDMI switch box, the Hopper, my Netflix Roku, the PS3, and the Wii, all on here being controlled. One controller to rule them all, let me tell you. It's excellent. But the one bad thing about that is the software to maintain it is Windows based, and you have to be in Windows to be able to use it. And so to update the software, you have to go into Windows to do it. Therefore, I've got a big area just devoted to Windows for that. So if you ever think that you'll ever get yourself 100% Windows free, the answer is, unless you can find open source software for every little thing and everything that you might think of needing in the future, you're always going to have something tied to Windows or Mac to go back to. And even, I can't even say Mac, because there's a lot of stuff there for a long time that still isn't even Mac compatible, that you still have to be in a Windows environment to run. I mean, how long was it that Netflix was Windows only and you couldn't even use it on a Mac? I mean, how crummy is that? But that's a topic for another day. Hope you all had a great week. I hope that the Halloween parties didn't get you and that the trick-or-treaters were kind to you. If it's morning, evening, noon, or night, whatever you're having, enjoy it. This is Zorin, signing off. Nanu nanu. This is DasGregor. Have a great weekend. Bye.